How do one write a cookbook? Well, if you are any of these sensible people, you start with a theme. Foreign cuisine, traditional home cooking, or just something really fancy. Break the recipe down into easy to follow steps. Provide precise measurements for each of the ingredients. Make it fun, approachable, novel, preferably all three at the same time. What you don't want to do is include something cheap, bland, or just flat out boring. You also don't want to put them on old, yellowed scraps of paper. In essence, a cookbook is a technical manual, impersonal, technical, written in a way to provide clear instructions. Modern cookbooks are often more lively, with colorful pictures and sometimes trivia about cuisine. They are not why you would read a cookbook. I mean, it's fun, I guess. Who doesn't want to know more about dumplings? Still, it's just a cookbook. I read this to learn how to cook. Nothing less, nothing more. But one day I stumbled upon this. A collection of home-style recipes shared by the elderly of Hong Kong, who all have their own story to tell about the food they ate. In it is a curious recipe. Leftover rice and fermented black bean rice balls. To make it, you crush a few fermented black beans, mix them with rice from last night, roll them into a ball, and that's it. Is it boring? Yes. Is it bland? Also yes. But to the people making it, and to the people who ate it, it meant so much more. Last year, Reside Games released Venba, a cooking game that on first glance share a lot of design DNA with Cooking Mama. Games that focus on the fun of cooking, cutting, stirring, boiling, steaming, and serving, without the messy aftermath of cleaning up. You might have already noticed from the music and heavy use of spice, Venba is about Indian food. More specifically, it's a story of an immigrant family from India. Their culture, their heritage, and most importantly, their family cookbook. Besides the literal act of cooking, a big part of Venba is actually figuring out the recipe, because it's handwritten in Tamil and not exactly in pristine condition. When I'm reading the cookbook, the history in it is undeniable. The aged, weathered notebook has certainly seen better days, with missing pages and fading ink. It's honestly hard to read at times, but the book's true value lies beyond the mere information contained within. As a first-generation immigrant, Venba still holds much memory of her life back in India. While she and her husband still struggle to gain a foothold in this new world, every time she reads the cookbook from her mother, it brings back memory of a more tender time. Later in her life, the book was passed on to her son, who as a second-generation immigrant has lost touch with his parents and his Indian heritage. The book is a reminder of the time they spent together. The childhood wonder when his parents showed him the rocket, back when both of them are still around. My mom once had a recipe much like Venba's cookbook. It was from my grandmother, who passed away over 10 years ago. And every winter, my mother would cook up this lamb stew, served in a big hot pot, big enough to feed a dozen people. I have a lot of warm memories of the family serving one massive pot on a cold winter day. Today, that number has unfortunately shrunk. Not everyone who once shared this table is still around anymore, and this pot is what we have got to remember them by. Spanning over a million works, The length of In Search of Lost Time is only one of the defining features of this French classic. Set in the late 19th century, In Search of Lost Time is all about recollection of past memory. The story revolves around the narrator's upbringing in France during the late 19th century. At first, he can only remember a tiny fraction of his childhood in a town called Cambrai, a single night, when his mother was too preoccupied with guests to kiss him good night. No matter how hard he tried, that was the only surviving memory of his childhood hometown. For a long time, absolutely no memory of Cambrai surfaced. To a point he questions if they even exist anymore. But that is not true. We remember by association. Memory attach themselves to things. It could be a city, a person, a book, or a piece of cake. One unassuming winter, by pure chance, he had a piece of petite madeleine, a kind of sponge cake in the shape of a seashell. It wasn't the first time he had it, but this time he soaked it in tea before eating it, just like how his aunt fed him on that one particular Sunday morning. Suddenly the Cambrai in his past come back to life. Memories previously thought long gone are now crystal clear. The town of his childhood, rise like mushroom after a rain. The garden of his house, the town square and the streets, now regain their form and color, as if he had only left yesterday. In a similar manner, it's often the simplest dish that evokes the deepest memory. Grandma Grandpa Cook started as a community project to document recipes from Hong Kong's elderly. But soon it became obvious that it's impossible to separate food from the story of their life. My grandparents' generation, who were born in early 20th century, are almost unanimously immigrants. Since Hong Kong was relatively stable as a British colony, many of them came to seek refuge during time of unrest. So, their meal reflected that reality. Remember leftover rice and fermented bean rice ball? It was an entire meal from someone's childhood. Because her school can only afford a bowl of rice and a single bean for each student. Chop suey might be a popular dish in overseas Chinese cuisine now, but it was actually a quick and easy way for poor families to turn leftover food into a proper meal. One old lady recalls her mother would bring her to fancy restaurants to buy whatever leftovers there is, and turn them into amazing meals. Mother had lost the use of her left hand, she said. It was her right hand that took care of the four of us. I have always seen my mother as an amazing person. My parents were born in the 60s, a time of relative stability and abundance. But my grandparents, their childhood lies right in the midst of a revolution, an invasion, and civil war, when cooking is less about taste, but making the most out of whatever you have got. In their eyes, the story of food is the story of life and death. No wonder they told me not to leave even a single grain of rice behind, because that would have been the only food they have for 3 days. No wonder they refused to throw anything away, because a new pair of shoes would mean less food on the table. And no wonder calling people fat is actually considered a compliment, especially for kids, because a fat baby meant they are well fed and are likely to survive. As an universally shared human experience, as a cultural object, or just as a means to survive, it's hard to overstate the importance of food in our collective consciousness and individual life. Maybe this is why I find it almost impossible to just talk about the methods of preparing our food. Is leftover rice and fermented bread bean rice balls a good recipe? Probably not. But it's nonetheless important for the things it carried. Memories buried so deep, only a madeleine cake is capable of unearthing them. Connections to family member that was once in our life. Stories of an entire generation who struggle to put food on the table. And it's beautiful. It's not something that belongs in a history book. Still, it's an important part of our collective past. To understand food is to understand life, of how we have lived, died, and loved. So, how do you write a cookbook? Well, you get some rice from yesterday and a single fermented black bean.